right, so Melissa kind of hinted at something. I want to encourage you maybe just kind of go out there and look. We talked about these foster kids that we're going to hopefully bless this Christmas. I'm pretty excited about that. But there's actually 10 stars on the back of the information tower in the lobby of some names and information if you want to go ahead and get a sneak peek. You'll hear more about this next week, but it's the first of several community partners that we're hoping to work with into the next year in ways that help us as a church live a bigger story. So this Christmas, we basically, as a church, adopted these 10 foster families. We're going to bless them with Christmas. I want to invite you to get in on that. We'll tell you more about how to do that next week, but you can go ahead and take a sneak peek when you're out there. Because I like to say a lot of times, this is not me. This is kind of the package that carries me around for hopefully a few more years on this earth. But I'm more than just a body, right? I'm a person. I'm a spirit. I live on. And what you see going on around here as well. I mean, new asphalt. We're getting new paint this week. All this stuff is great, but this is not the church. This is the building we meet in. This is a tool. This is a way that God allows us to be the church, but it's not the only way. We're really the church when we leave here and go do things and love our community. And so we're looking for really, really strategic ways that God has uniquely blessed and shaped us to be for our community. I like how Paul wrote to Timothy. Timothy was kind of his young protege in ministry. But one of my favorite verses is where Paul told Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fear or timidity, but he's given us a spirit of power, of love, and self-discipline. And I love that verse. I love quoting that verse, kind of hyping myself up with that. I love it, like, except for that last little phrase, right? The self-discipline part. I don't love that one as much because that one's hard. Because here's a truth, I don't know if you can relate, but I'm coming to grips with in my own life, that as I look back, I recognize I am the common denominator in every bad decision I've ever made. Understand? Like, as I look back, I mean, I was there for every one of them. A lot of different situations, a lot of different things I wish I could go back and do over again, involving a lot of places, people, things. But I was there for all of it, right? Every catastrophic mistake, every bonehead decision, every word I wish I could take back, right? All my bad decisions involved me somehow. I'm the one that talked myself out of doing good things like exercising when I'm supposed to. Or I'm the one that talks myself into extra helpings of dessert that keep me up all night. That was me. I'm the one who, those online shopping sites especially, like they've got me pegged with their, you might also like, boom, right? Give into that. Or like especially the one where customers who also purchased. And so I'm all like, well, if they got that, I need to get on that too. I must be great. And all that's kind of hard for me to admit, but I wanted to kind of share this little nugget of wisdom, not necessarily because I just feel like I can confide all my junk in you guys, not that you're not trustworthy or anything like that. I'm sure you are. But I'm confessing this because I also know that you are the common denominator in every bad decision you've ever made, too. And we just need to own this together. You and I, we are the masterminds behind our own greatest regrets. I was a part of them, you were a part of them, whether they were financial decisions, relational decisions, career decisions, educational decisions, whatever. Which leads me to believe this, and this is kind of what I want us to consider and lean into a little bit this morning, all right? That my greatest challenge is me. The guy facing me in the mirror every morning is the person I wrestle with the most. And ultimately, he's the only person I can control. And I may not know all of you really well. I know some of you better than others, right? But here's something I know about each and every one of you. That you are a difficult follower. I know that. You can be a hard person to lead. It's kind of in our nature. It's our culture. We wear this as a badge of honor. We're proud about it. You and I both need to own this. We are just fiercely independent people. And yet when it comes right down to it, we can all also be our own worst enemy. But we're also really good at criticizing everybody else, aren't we? We got to own this too. And I'm a part of this. And especially as we kind of go into a busy season of the holidays and like next year's an election year, so this stuff really starts to get ramped up. Because like one of our favorite pastimes is is criticizing our national leaders or other people in authority, right? We just love doing that. Like we love to criticize politicians of the other party, right? The other people. But when I force myself to be honest, okay, just speaking for me here, you can wrestle with this and own as much of this and reckon with it if you need to. But for me, I have done more to discourage my own success than any politician that's ever been elected to office. Only one person can end up or can ensure that I end up where I want to be. Only one person can ensure I end up somewhere on purpose. And that person isn't sitting in a House of Representatives. That person isn't even sitting in the White House. That person is sitting in my house. And the reality is that we face our greatest leadership challenge every morning when we face ourselves. In the mirror, right? The art of leading yourself well, it isn't fun. It's a discipline. It's self-discipline. That's why Paul talked about it. And I think it reminds us all, if we're honest, that we have a little bit of work to do in this area always. And so I want to give you 3 little principles to take with you this morning as we move into this busy, stressful next year. But because living a bigger story, whatever that means for you, it starts with facing that man, that woman in the mirror and learning to move that person in the right direction. And I know, and you do as well, I know how demoralizing it can be to not do that well. When I'm not self-disciplined, I know the result of that a lot of times can be a lot of guilt. It can be a lot of shame, a lot of what-ifs and shoulda, couldas, and a lot of hurt, a lot of isolation. But I also know that those kinds of things are much, much worse than the pain that might come with trying to be self-disciplined. So I think this is just a really big deal. I think that's why Paul told Timothy about it. You can't live a bigger life without some level of self-discipline. You can't lead anybody else well if you can't lead yourself well first. Now, having said all of that, I think we would also recognize that excellent self-discipline isn't by itself a requirement for being a leader, right? Because you could probably think, we could list out several leaders, examples of leaders who were just messed up people personally. Like leaders who were disasters. You might work for one, right? You might have grown up with one. You might live with one. You know, they still had authority. They could still throw their weight around or whatever, but you didn't necessarily have to have your act together in order to be in a position of leadership. But you have to be good at leading yourself if you want to be a leader that's worth following. Big difference, because following a leader is way different than just being coerced or being forced or being pushed to do something against your will. I might have the authority or, in some other way I could enforce my will on you or coerce you or force you to do something, but that doesn't make me a leader you want to follow. And most of us, if you think about it, we learned this lesson way early on with our own parents. Because whether or not you wanted to be like your parents when you grew up, a lot of that depended on how well they led themselves. Like a lot of you, if I asked, you'd say, yeah, I like my parents. I don't want to be like them. There's love and affection. Sure, I love my mom. I love my dad. I mean, they're my dad, my mom. But what? Because if you're honest, do what I say, not what I do, doesn't work. I mean, it might work in the moment, but it doesn't work long at all. You learned way more from your parents in how they led themselves, how they lived their lives, than anything they tried to teach you or even say to you or even how they disciplined you. All right, just think about this. Imposed discipline, forced discipline is nullified by a lack of self-discipline. Why? Why is that true? Because you got to practice what you preach if you're going to respect anybody. So get this, okay? Self-discipline, this is why I think Paul brought this up. Self-discipline is the key to lasting influence. And when I'm talking about influence, you don't have to be in like a position of leadership. We all want to live a bigger life. You want to know your life has purpose, right? You want to know that there's a meaning to what you do. But you can't separate influence and purposeful living from self-discipline, because we are rarely open to influence from someone we don't respect. Now, you probably have to go in tomorrow and your boss gives you expectations, right? You got to do what the boss says. If you're a kid, do what your mom and dad says. That's being respectful. Follow authority. But in terms of being open to their influence, choosing to follow somebody, it hardly ever happens with people we don't respect, right? And in general, we usually don't respect people who show a lack of self-discipline in their lives. We see right through that. And I just got to tell you, as a pastor, I hate this sermon. I hate having to preach this because I know how much I struggle with this. It makes me want to just throw my hands up and say I quit, right? Because you could see right through this in me. I know my weaknesses. Some of y'all know my weaknesses. But if I quit, if I just give up, that just tends to prove my own worst fears about myself. And then I wallow in guilt and shame and isolation. So in terms of influence, self-discipline is really, really important. And understand as well, this isn't something you go home and pray for. You don't have to go home and ask God for self-discipline. Paul said to Timothy, God's already given it to you, along with strength and love. You have the spirit of self-discipline. You have habits, right? They might not be good habits, but you're already disciplined to do something. But are my disciplines the right disciplines? Am I leading myself well? And parents, we will never outgrow this, no matter how old our kids get, no matter how old we get. Like, how many of your kids, think about this, how many of your kids were or maybe are like mine, like when they were really good at saying, but Dad, do I have to? You ever heard that before? Dad, do I have to? Y'all said this, right? Dad, do I have to? Mom, do I have to? And you're just kind of like, no, I'm just like hearing myself say it, right? But at some point, think about this. The true answer to Dad, do I have to, becomes no, you don't have to. And for me, I think it was when it became impossible for me to do this with my kids, right? All of a sudden, I couldn't make them do everything I wanted to make them do. They have choices. So I can't make them do everything. They can make their own choices, and they do, but they can't always choose the consequences to their choices. So now it's a lot more about influence. I can't ultimately make my kids do anything. But I thought about this. I can keep them from doing some things sometimes, though, with influence. And just kind of think this out. Play this out to its ultimate end. Like prison is the ultimate way we keep people from doing things, right? Can't make their choices for them, but we can keep them from doing bad things again. And I don't know if that works with your kids or not. Maybe that's a little extreme, like, hey, eat your veggies. You don't want to go to prison, right? I don't know. It might be too big of a leap. Anyway, where's I going? The point is you want to have influence, to know that your life matters. You want to know that your story means something bigger than just you. And that you have purpose beyond yourself. Because you can't make anyone do anything they don't choose to do, including your own kids. That means you got to have influence. And you can't separate it from discipline. So you already have your habits, you already have self-discipline, but how are you going to master this? Because anyone who's ever, if you think about people that you know that have been removed from leadership, like politicians sometimes or church leaders sometimes get removed from leadership. Anybody that you've ever thought of that's done that, they had disciplines. In fact, they had a lot of habits, bad habits that got them in trouble. But they didn't lead themselves well. And we're never better than what we do. Doesn't matter what we say. And there's only one person who can make us do anything. And yeah, I know the spiritual answer, God. God can make you do whatever, but God in his sovereignty gave you a free will to choose. So ultimately on this planet, the only person who can make me do anything is me. The guy in the mirror. So how do I lead that guy to lead well with self-discipline? I want to give you 3 real simple things that you can make. These are choices that you can make about yourself, for yourself, so you can kind of put shoes on this, take it home with you, and work it out. And these aren't really all that original. There's been a lot of books, articles written in the thousands about the topic of self-discipline. But I just want you to encourage you to try to take this for yourself. Now, here's the first choice I'd encourage you to think about. To say, I will be honest with myself even when it makes me feel bad about myself. Be honest with myself even when it makes me feel bad about myself. Now, that at first I know can sound kind of like the opposite of what a lot of self-help books, therapies try to teach you about loving yourself well, taking care of yourself, self-care, and all those things are really important. I'm not talking against those things. We need to talk back to that inner bully sometimes. But here's something, okay, you won't hear said much in today's culture, I don't think. But did you know that there are, in fact, worse things than feeling bad about yourself? There are. One of those things that's worse than feeling bad about yourself is lying to yourself. One of, if not the worst thing I can do in trying to feel good about myself is to try to lie to myself. I know it's like, no, but Dennis, I got to do whatever it takes to just feel good about me, right? I got to do whatever works so I can feel good about myself. And I would just say, okay, well, if that's you and that's kind of your approach to it, how is that working for you? Is it getting you where you want to go? Because I'm convinced there's worse things than feeling bad about yourself. Because you know something else that's worse than feeling bad about yourself? You know this. It's hanging on to things that you know are bad about yourself and trying to convince yourself they're not bad. Hanging on to what you know is bad about yourself. It's not only okay to feel bad about yourself sometimes. I think it's actually good for us to face those things if they motivate you to deal with, to work on, to get rid whatever it is that is bad about yourself. In fact, way back in the days of the Old Testament prophets, there's one named Jeremiah. And his story is fascinating to me because he had probably like the worst job of all the prophets. He had a horrible job. His whole job, it seemed like his whole life was just to continue pounding the drum and telling the Israelites that if y'all don't shape up, God's going to have to give you consequences. Just warning the nation of Israel over and over and over again. God's not going to just continue to ignore your bad behavior. If you don't choose to trust me, God says, if you don't choose to obey me, I can't just sit back and do nothing. And it wasn't because God was just vindictive or anything like that. It was more like, hey, I'm a good father, and no good father is going to sit back and just let his kids run wild in the street, right? They discipline their kids. And so toward the end of all of this, Jeremiah finally gets asked to do something, go to the king, all the other nations of Israel, and he was tasked with saying, listen, I've been warning you. Here's what God's been saying. And so now we're at the point where it's kind of game over because the Babylonians are already on their way to come and ransack the city. In fact, some of them, he said, are already inside the gates of the city. Imagine, okay, if this is your assignment, you're Jeremiah, you got to go to the king and you're supposed to tell him this. It's too late for fighting now. It's too late to even defend ourselves now. Probably the best thing you can do is surrender. Go ahead and open the gate so there'll be less bloodshed because it's over. Now you can imagine if you're the king, you know, how well he probably took this news. So they have Jeremiah thrown into a dry well, which is dry. It was actually just this muddy pit. And it's kind of funny to me when you read it because Jeremiah, they throw him into this big mud pit, and he just keeps prophesying, just keeps preaching, keeps saying what he was saying down there in the bottom of this pit. So eventually some friends come and they get him out. And he survives. And it's just amazing, but this terrible story of this time when God's people just kept ignoring the covenant they had with God, and they went too far. But it's like right in the middle of this story and all this preaching and prophesying that Jeremiah was doing, he makes this remarkable statement. And it's something you may have heard before, and we all know this kind of contains some truth. Even if you're not a believer, like you can own this. Because Jeremiah said this. He said, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. And then he asks, who can understand it? It's kind of like he basically says, you know, it's hopeless. I mean, there's no fix. And this isn't one of these like great motivational feel-good verses you want to go like tape up on your fridge somewhere, right, and remind yourself. But the answer to his question, like, who can understand it? It's kind of rhetorical. The answer is nobody. Who can get this figured out? No one. But this is exactly why we say things like, you know, why did I do that? Right? What was I thinking? Or I don't know what I was thinking. Jeremiah would say, well, I know what you were thinking. Or like, well, I don't know why I bought that. I know why you bought that. Or, you know, I don't know why I went running back to him. Jeremiah and probably all your friends would say, I know why you went, right? That's your shame speaking. That's coming out of your heart. And Jeremiah would say it's just something inside of you because your heart is deceitful. The easiest person for me to lie to is me. The guy in the mirror. Nobody does a better job of selling you on bad decisions than you do. Think about this, right? I remember when I used to train sales guys several years back. I mean, as soon as you see something, own this, okay? Most of us, as soon as you see something you want, you start selling yourself on it, don't you? Every good reason why I need this or why I should have this. And so I would train these sales guys, use that, right? There comes a time when you've done your sales pitch, you've done everything you can do, where you slide the contract or whatever it is, you sign the agreement across the table, put the pen down and shut up. Because the next person that speaks at that point loses. That's what I always tell them. Why? Because we sell ourselves at that point. If you want it, you'll find a way to sell yourself. No one is more effective at selling yourself than you are. But the right discipline just requires some brutal honesty. But this is why we push away from this so often. But listen, okay, you can't feel good about yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. If you're trying to lead a team at work and you discover a liar on the team, what do you do with the liar? You fire the liar. Get rid of him. You can't trust him. And that's what I suggest you do for you too. Fire the liar. That inner bully that we talk about, he's crafty. At least mine is a lot. My inner bully doesn't always tell me bad things. A lot of times my inner bully feeds me a bunch of stuff I want to hear. Doesn't always use criticism. He'll tell me what I want to hear over what I need to hear, the hard truth. So I had to learn to fire him. You know, I'll be honest with myself, even if for the moment it makes me feel bad about myself. I owe that to me. And like, here's just a really helpful side note, and then we're going to move on to number 2. But what if instead of like constantly having to ask yourself, why did I do that? You could instead learn the discipline of asking the question on the front end of a decision, not after the decision's already been made. Like, just take a step back, pause, and think ahead of a decision. Here's what I want to do. But instead of later on asking, why did I do that? Why don't we start by asking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I mean, it's a powerful question if we're honest with ourselves on the front of a decision. And here's how we can really punctuate it. Not just why am I doing this, but why am I doing this really? Why am I doing this really? Because this adds some emotion to the question. That's usually how we make decisions anyways, based on emotions. So why am I doing this really? Why am I buying this really? Like, why am I saying this really? Why am I posting this? Really? What am I hoping for here? Why am I sharing this with them? Why am I eating this? Why am I avoiding this? Really? Why am I going there? Why am I wearing that? Really? And like you'll hear this, a lot of politicians are really fond of quoting something Jesus said along these lines, even if they don't know Jesus. They like invoking Jesus. Because Jesus made this amazing statement. You've probably heard it, where he said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Right? Anybody can quote that. Makes them sound good. But Jesus knew that the reality about the truth really will set you free. Even the hard truth. Even the truth I owe myself but makes me feel bad about myself will still set me free. And Jeremiah points out, though, the opposite truth. Okay, the truth will set you free, but dishonesty with myself is like a prison. Lying to myself is like a cage. And you've probably felt the truth of this before. So I decide I will be honest with myself even when it makes me feel bad about myself. I owe it to myself. And here's decision number 2. I decide I'll choose what I value most over what I want now. And now stay with me, because this is where we push back. This is really the heart of discipline right here. Self-discipline. Because this keeps the long range in mind over the short term. And we talk a lot about, we did this in a series a while back. We talked about this principle of the path that basically said that direction determines destination. Right? So in terms of leading myself well, self-discipline, it's like not only do I need to know what that future destination is, I need to be really aware of where I'm leading myself today, because destination is determined by my direction now. So what direction am I going in? What direction am I going in right now? And the best answer to this question, what direction am I going in, would be to say I'm headed in the direction of my values, not just what I want right now. Because if you're like me, so often what I want right now is not based on my values, not what I value most. And the sad truth I found, talking to a lot of people, though, is that more often than not, so many people never discover what they really value until it's too late. That's why we get all stressed and anxious about stuff. But if you lead yourself well in the right direction now, in order to do that, you've got to figure out where it is you're trying to head in the long run. You got to know this. And sometimes it takes talking it out with people. Sometimes a lot of people have a hard time even answering that question. What do I really want in life? Where am I headed? What do I want to look like 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, a year from now? But even what we say we value sometimes and what we really value, like what I say is important to me, but then when I look at my checkbook and my calendar, what that says is valuable to me are totally different things. That's why we're so anxious. That's why we're so pent up all the time, because I know my walk doesn't match my talk. It's incongruent values. My life doesn't match my beliefs. But if you never really can define what it is you really value, how will you ever even really know when you get there? How would you even know if you got it? So don't wait till it's too late to figure this out. Great self-discipline that Paul is talking about is about leading yourself towards what you really value. But you can't lead yourself there if you don't even know where there is. So let me pull back for just a second. I want to talk to the Jesus followers here this morning. Because there's a twist to this for us. And if I've surrendered myself as best I can to follow Jesus, to follow God's will, and and I believe God teaches me, Jesus teaches me how to best live that life. If I've accepted Jesus' simple invitation, follow me. That's all Jesus asks, just follow me. If I've decided to follow Jesus, then I have to also begin valuing the things that the one I'm following values, right? Like, okay, if you're not a Christian, you're just kind of leaning into this, kicking into this, then, I mean, you figure this out on your own and go for it, and you figure your own values. But once I've taken the first step to become a follower of Jesus, then it falls on me to determine what he values the most if I'm going to follow him. How do I arrange my life around his values? And fortunately, Jesus made this incredibly easy for us to do. Very simple to understand. Not always simple to live out, but he boiled it all down to this. What I value most, Jesus says, is that you show your love for God by how well you love everybody else. That's what I value. I demonstrate my love for God and how I love others. My values are determined and shown by how well I treat people. That's how Jesus boiled it down. That's it. And what made Jesus more mad, more angry than anything else was when anybody got in the way of other people trying to find their way to God, when people interrupted the process. You know what Jesus valued most? You. You. He valued you most. And Jesus valued the person sitting to your left. And he valued the person sitting to your right. And Jesus valued the person that will be standing in front of you in line this afternoon. And Jesus valued your friends and your family. And he values the lady at work. You don't even know her name, but you see her every day. And Jesus values that guy that you avoid because you really don't even like him. And your Heavenly Father might say, well, you know, I get that you don't like him, but I created him and I love him. And I want you to figure out how to at least find value in them because I created them with intrinsic value. And even if you don't like them and they don't like you. And Jesus summed all of those values up in one new value, one new command, right? Love one another. As I've loved you, love each other. Get that right, everything else tends to fall in place. And then the Apostle Paul stated it as even a more extreme value. He said this in Galatians 5. He said, the only thing that counts. Just that phrase itself is pretty dramatic, right? The only thing. Like out of everything. The Bible's a big book, a lot of rules, but the only thing that counts, and counts is a value word, right? Counts. The only thing that has value is faith expressing itself in love. That's what it comes down to, Paul said. He's like, if you don't get anything else, get this. The only thing that counts. I mean, this is where Jesus followers go. But I get it, because like, Dad, yeah, Dennis, but you don't work where I work. You don't know the people I have to deal with, right? I mean, this sounds way too soft and fluffy. I mean, I'd expect this, but you don't deal with the people I deal with, Dennis. I mean, you even watch the news? You even know what's going on in our world? Like, how can I just? Two things real quick, okay? Because I know this is hard, easy but hard. But first of all, okay, remember who's saying this. I mean, this isn't coming from me. This is coming from Jesus and the Apostle Paul. And two men who didn't just influence even our modern culture. These are two guys who shaped Western culture, even for people that don't like them, don't believe in them. Like, do you think either you or I are going to shape Western culture? Probably not. You got influence, but it's not likely. So before you just too quickly go off thinking this is too soft and mild and this is just a bunch of hippie love stuff, just remember who said it. And then secondly, okay, I was thinking about this. Every funeral I've ever had to go to, every funeral I've ever attended, speaks to the truth of what we really value in life, right? That's where perspective is right in front of us. And I have yet to attend a funeral that didn't shout the values of faith and love being the very center of this life. I mean, I've been to a few funerals. Maybe you've been where people struggle to say nice things about the dearly departed, and it's kind of uncomfortable. I've been to one of those where it's kind of like, nobody really wants to say anything, preacher, so just say some encouraging words and we'll go with that, right? Yeah, but I've been to other funerals that like filled up the auditorium, filled up a room, and people lining up afterwards. But you know what I've learned at almost any funeral is this, okay? The value of life is almost always measured by how much I give away. How much of my life was lived bigger than me? That's how we always measure the value of life. How much of it was given away? So as Jesus followers, okay, and even if you're not a Jesus follower, I'd encourage you to lean in and embrace this because we are to value people because people matter to God. That's why. And along the way, if you do this, you embrace this as an ethic of how you treat people, you're going to find your life full of a lot of other good things as well. Even if you don't shape Western culture, you'll have a pretty good influence. Now here's number 3 real quickly. I can't lead myself by myself. Now that's not as much of a choice as it is just kind of a statement. I wanted to just kind of make this a choice. Like, I will not lead myself by myself. But the truth of the matter is you can't. You can't anyway. You can't lead yourself by yourself. It's truth, and you choose whether or not to acknowledge it. But yeah, I could spend weeks just on this principle alone. So let me focus on one simple truth to take home with you. You think about your life, your history, where you are today, the things that you're most proud of in your life, and probably even the things that you regret the most in your life, things that you hope nobody finds out about in your life, it all bears witness to this truth, that I can't lead myself by myself. Because just think with me, okay? Your greatest regrets, those things that you really wish you could go back and change, your greatest regrets involve other people. Sometimes other people you wish you'd never met. And a lot of those regrets, those people were friends, right? They weren't your enemies. They were people you liked hanging out with. You liked them. They liked you. You guys had shared common interests. That's what got you in trouble maybe sometimes. But it doesn't mean that you had shared values with them. Or you may have compromised your values for their values to be accepted or whatever. But regardless, okay, what you both wanted right now eventually became a regret for you as you look back on it. But we all do life with people. Whether you're in church or not, whether you find community here or not, you will find community somewhere. And your life is and will be shaped by the people you spend your time with. You will become the people you hang out with. Our friends determine the direction and quality of our lives. Can't help it. Can't avoid it. And we need more than just common interests. Now follow me here, okay? We need community. You were created for community. But you're going to find community somewhere. I can sound the drum all day long. I get in a group, get in community here at church, and you can choose not to do it, but you'll find community somewhere. But you need community with people who share more than just common interests. Like you need people that do more than just like the same music that you like and the same food and the same places and share the same hobbies even. Listen, you need to do life with people who share your values, people that share your struggles. You need to share your life with people who accept you for you. You know, warts and all, like somebody said, right? People that are moving in the same direction as you, struggling through the same things you're struggling through. You need people who will tell you the unfiltered truth because they value you and you trust them. And when I surround myself with people like that, then life together just seems to make life better. And now it's true, okay? Nobody can make you do anything but you. But when you share your life with people with the same values, it's just simply amazing how better life goes, how better we all are together. And let me, I hesitated to do this, but let me just share another real quick side note, especially with you parents when it comes to this, because I was thinking about my kids. Both of my kids were kind of born and raised in church. And so they've seen a lot of good, a lot of bad, pretty much everything in between when it comes to church. All they've known is church most of their lives. But parents, listen to me, okay? I don't want to say you're crazy for not having your kids in church every Sunday. Every Sunday. I said it. Every Sunday. Because I'm a counselor, and so we don't throw words like crazy around real often. So let me just say, you are out of your mind not to have your kids here every Sunday you can. We've designed our Life Kids program, and we're continuing to lean in and try to make this the best program that we can to partner with you, to be environments where we can partner with you in moving your kids in the directions that you want to see your kids go, the directions you want to see them go with the same values. And I'm just telling you, as a parent in today's world, in today's society, you are going to need partners. That's why any great local church is. It's a partner with parents who teach kids that God made you and that God loves you and that Jesus wants to be your friend forever. And we teach those kids how to apply that, how to live that out in their own little world every week, to equip them to live these truths out in their own world. Because listen, just like you, just like me, their friends are going to determine the quality and direction of their life. And what scares you, think about this, what scares me as a parent is that their friends, their influences are going to be the one that determine the quality and direction of their life. So I'm appealing to you. Let us partner with you in that. But we can't partner with you if your kids aren't here regularly. Just can't do it. All right, so I'm off my soapbox, rant's over, almost. Because I say all that, I want you to understand, okay, I'm not just up here in my ivory tower. Yeah, the preacher's supposed to say all this. I get it, Dennis, right? I know things get busy. I know there's a lot of competing activities out there, a lot of good stuff, and I'm not saying any of that's bad. I don't doubt for a moment that any parent in here isn't a great parent, okay? But at some point, you are going to want another adult that you trust who shares your values speaking into the life of your kids. And that gets increasingly difficult if you wait until like long after they're teenagers or they're 15, 16 years old and they got attitude bigger than this room, right, and angst and all that other stuff, and then you try dragging them back into church. But listen, if while you can bring your 7-year-old, your 9-year-old, your 11-year-old, it won't be that much of a struggle. And more importantly, okay, please, if you hear anything else, and then I will get off my soapbox, but you are teaching them your values now. Not in what you say, not in what you preach and teach, but in what you do and what you show them are values. And you need partners. Why? Because you can't lead yourself well by yourself. And neither can they. All right, so now here's the downside to all of this morning. You take this out of here and try to find a way to put this into practice in your life. If you do this, you might lose a friend or two. You just might, because human nature is that the value most crowd doesn't really like hearing a lot from the right now crowd doesn't like hearing a lot from the value most crowd. You don't tell me how to live my life right now. Value most can be threatening to those who want now. But there's a conflict. Some people won't get it, but that's okay. Okay, you can do this. Here's the bottom line. Okay, and I'm not sure who said this first, but everybody's going to end up somewhere. You're going to end up somewhere. Your direction is taking you somewhere. You will end up somewhere. But not everybody ends up somewhere on purpose. And this is what I want you to get. I want you to end up somewhere on purpose. I want our church to end up somewhere on purpose. I don't want us just go in autopilot. I don't want you to just kind of go with the flow. Just life will take me where it takes me. No, you have some choice. You have some direction. Every morning when you look in the mirror, you see someone who is made in the image of God, someone with infinite value given to them by their Creator, someone who was put on this earth for a purpose at this time, at this place, with those skills. And that person you see in the mirror every morning, that person deserves the truth from you. And if you're a parent, understand, okay, there's a lot of little smaller mirrors that are dependent on you. And if you're single, then you need to be looking for someone who's leading themselves well. You need to be the person that the person you're looking for is looking for, right? So I want you to end up somewhere on purpose. And that starts by facing the person in the mirror with honesty and living with a long view in mind and with partners who are headed in the same direction. To lead well, to live with love, lead with love, live a bigger story. Let me just pray with you. Father, I do pray this morning that you would help us to find practical ways to put this into our own lives and to practice this. And God, because I know you've created within all of us eternity in our hearts, a desire to live a bigger story, a desire to know that we have meaning. And you want to partner with us in this. And so, God, I just pray that you'd help us to hear your voice clearly, that you would give us the courage to know what to do with what we've just heard, that you would give us the strength to lean in, to stretch ourselves beyond the comfortable into what you've called us to do. And we pray you do that as a church as well as we continue to live a bigger story for you together. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so with that, you guys are dismissed. Hope to see you back next week. Bring somebody with you.